What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Staple Show. I'm seeing some comments here. Alex Barber, how do we know you didn't plan this with Ryan and Matt? I thought that was going to be a comment about us being late, and I want to take this time to mention that we were right on time. 7:30 on the dot. I made sure of it. Ryan Talbot, welcome in to the Shout Buffalo Bills Football Podcast, brought to you as always by Tops Friendly Markets. Are you ready for Slider Sunday, the Bills and the Pats, this Sunday at 1 p.m. in Foxborough? Every time you visit slidersunday.com, you have a chance to win free products, brand swag, tailgating gear, trips, and more. One chance per day, no purchase necessary. Tops Friendly Markets, make sure you make Tops part of your game day. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, not too much. Ready to talk some football.
I'm ready to talk some football, too. We got a lot to get into today. A pretty hefty injury report. That's on the docket. We'll probably start there. Then we're going to get into this offense because I feel like there's been so many talking points about this offense happening this week that I think, a place 7:31, Jessica says. No, that was 7:30 on the dot. Maybe there was a little buffering and maybe there was, but I hit go live at 7:30. I know I did, Ryan. Can you
I know you did
corroborate
too.
this?
We were ready. You said
Okay.
that we're going to start right on time tonight, and we did. We
Let's
absolutely
let's
did.
let's blame the technology if it actually didn't go until 7:31. We'll get into the offense. We'll talk a bunch about that. We'll take your questions, and actually, we got a bunch of questions from our Shout Buffalo Bills insiders. I put out the bat signal to all of our superheroes in the Shout Insider chat, and they came through with a bunch of cool questions that we're going to kind of dive into, and also maybe some trade deadline targets. And I've been thinking a little bit about this the last couple of days, and where maybe the Bills could spend some of their energy or draft capital to add some players. So we'll get into all of that over the course of the show. But let's start with Ed Oliver, because out of today, I think the most concerning development post Giants game is the potential of Ed Oliver not playing against the Patriots. And today was a walkthrough. He has a toe injury that he sustained in the Giants game, played through it, played 87% of the snaps, was out there quite a bit, finished the game. So that's a good sign. But he starts off on the injury report, a DNP to start. Tomorrow is a huge day, Ryan. Whether or not he practices and maybe like projecting his status for Sunday. But I guess I wanted to take a second to talk about what does this thing look like without Ed Oliver, because beyond him, I mean, no disrespect to any of those guys, but they are just a group of guys. You'd probably see a call up off the practice squad, a much heavier load for Poona Ford, who we could talk about as well. Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips played quite a bit. So what do you think happens if Oliver can't go?
Yeah, if Oliver can't go, it's going to be a major loss to the Bills on the inside of that defensive line, because obviously we know they're without Daquan Jones for the foreseeable future. And Ed Oliver, even in his first game without Jones, he didn't show up much in the stat sheet, but he made a lot of impact plays in terms of kind of blowing things up on the inside, like for the Giants, and helping other players get through and make plays and kind of clean things up. So he still had a really nice game last week too. So if he is out, you're right. I mean, that increases the workload for Jordan Phillips, someone that's been dealing with injuries the past few years here in Buffalo. You probably want to limit his reps if possible for that very reason. Tim Settle, who had a strong summer, but I probably hasn't lived up to the expectations the Bills had in mind for him when they signed him to a free agent contract. And then Poona Ford, someone who came in and played a little less than 20 snaps last week in his first action of the season. It's still a solid or a decent trio of players, but the drop off obviously is pretty great based on the play of Ed Oliver so far this year.
I took a quick peek at the practice squad because I had to make sure that Elianku was still there, as the Bills have kind of moved some people in and out. He's one of two defensive tackles on the Bills practice squad. Andrew Brown, who they've signed after the Daquan Jones injury. I don't think you want to be in a spot where you're relying on him to play any significant amount of snaps. He's obviously just gotten here too, so there's a bit of a ramp up probably that's needed there. But I think Anku has proven over the course of his career that he can fill in. And I think with the Oliver development, like, you kind of almost have to be grateful if this is a day-to-day situation and will maybe, hone in on that a little bit more with Sean before practice tomorrow. This is a week where you could probably survive without Oliver just because of what's happening on the other side. New England, the interior of their offensive line is bad. I mean, the guard play on the left of David Andrews is the one consistent piece. And then you have a young guard on the left. I'm forgetting his name. And then Michael Onwenu was out last week. And when he has played, Andrew Callahan, our good buddy who gave us our first look at the Patriots earlier in the week, said he hasn't even looked like that guy this season because he's been dealing with an injury. That's a huge development, Ryan. Remember when we did that preseason draft with Joe Marino and Jeremy White, I had him as the first offensive lineman off the board after Terron Armstead.
Yeah, so if the Patriots continue to struggle with their offensive line play, which has been a theme throughout the season, then the Bills, like you said, can probably get by. But you obviously want your best guys out there. You're hoping that the fact that Ed Oliver played through the toe injury against the Giants means that he can probably play on Sunday. At least that's the hope. Knowing full well that he can have a full week to kind of rest, take it kind of easy, maybe be limited once or twice this week, but go through the practice week without having to do too much. He's at that point in his career now where he doesn't necessarily need those practice reps. He's shown that he can come out and just kind of show up and play. So I still think I'm not, I don't want to say I'm overly concerned yet that he won't play, but it would be a major development for the inside of this defensive line if he can't suit up on Sunday.
Did you notice that just now? I hit my little button on my chair and I went like flying down a couple notches. Did you notice that?
I did see something there. Yeah, as I was talking.
We should make that into a GIF. Do you say GIF or GIF?
I do both ways, actually. I don't just pick one or the other.
Wow.
GIF is what I usually say, though.
GIF?
Yeah.
I knew that would be the case. You kind of take the less traveled road on most of those kinds of things, like Falcons. What's another one?
I don't know. I say a lot of things where people
Falcons is one that you really get people heated in the comments with that one.
Yeah, my wife gets after me for the way I say hangers. Like you put your shirt on a hanger. I don't know.
Yeah, like I think the G is supposed to be silent.
Not for me, it's not.
Okay.
Not for this guy.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate it. I like when you say Falcons, excuse me. So whatever. All right. The rest of this injury report, Quentin Morris. I mean, it's interesting because the Bills. One more note on Ed Oliver before we move on. So I saw him in the field house today. Obviously coming off the practice field, walking around. He looked like he was in good spirits. So I want to provide at least that little nugget of something that I saw while I was there. Sometimes when guys aren't practicing, they're getting like treatment, and maybe he was. I didn't see anything behind the scenes, but the one moment that I did see him after practice, he looked like he was walking around pretty well. So I think maybe that's a good sign, and we'll kind of see where things stand tomorrow. And then when we get the injury report, I mean, if he's limited tomorrow, I think things drastically improve in terms of this weekend. But we'll wait and see. Interestingly enough, that Greg Rousseau remains on the injury report, as does Dane Jackson, both with foot injuries. Rousseau played last week. Dane Jackson didn't. They were both limited today. I think probably both trend in a pretty good direction for this weekend. We'll see how Dane Jackson's going. And that's going to be important for Dane because Ryan Kyer Elam re-aggravated an ankle injury and was limited today. So if Dane Jackson is able to get back, that might kind of, I think he'd probably start over Kyer Elam anyway. But even so, that's something to watch out for, because if you have those two guys dealing with the injury, the depth of cornerback all of a sudden the Bills are very challenged in that department.
Yeah, they are very thin at cornerback right now, especially outside cornerback, obviously. So to see Kyer Elam pop up on this injury report and to hear from Sean McDermott today that it was re-aggravation of an ankle injury from this summer, it's definitely worrisome. It's definitely something to monitor, because you're right. They were without Dane Jackson last week. They were without Christian Benford the week before that. They've lost Trey White for the season. So they're taking their hits there, and the depth is really being tested. We've talked a lot about Jamarcus Ingram and how much that we believe in his abilities and like his upside, but this is not a situation or a area where you want to see these younger players and experienced players playing significant reps this early in the season, or for the majority of this season. So You're hoping that Elam's injury isn't too significant, that he can be out there. But obviously, Dane Jackson, if you can get him back into the fold, that would be a significant development for this team.
Um, Pretty big news today for Bills fans that were panicking a little bit over the Dalton Kincaid situation with him potentially remaining on in the concussion protocol. He was out of it today, which I think is huge. He was available for the walkthrough. We'll see where he's at tomorrow. But the Bills actually worked out a couple of tight ends earlier this week, according to Aaron Wilson out in Houston. It was did you see the names of that of the two tight
I
ends?
did not. I did not. I missed
I
those.
just sent them along in the subtext. I'll bring them up before we in a minute. I'll find it and bring it up. But I think it's interesting that they're working out tight ends because Quentin Morris couldn't practice today. And so you're looking at this weekend. I mean, even when Kincaid and Knox have both been good to go, Quentin Morris has been a game day active, plays a special teams role. So I think it tells you two things. Number one, Morris's injury could be something of more week to week category. We'll see. And then also maybe Joel Wilson, not like super thrilled with what they have on the practice squad. Obviously, a young UDFA developing player. They might want to go outside of the organization to find, a 1 week stopgap if Quentin Morris can't play.
Yeah, if he can't play, that's again, it's a significant hit because of the special teams play. We saw what he could do against the Giants, coming up with a game-winning score. He has that athleticism. He's someone that's improved as a blocker in his time here in Buffalo, which is something else they'd like to emphasize with the tight ends. It's an area that Dalton Kincaid is still kind of working on his craft at, but getting Kincaid back into the fold is going to be a big thing for this offense. I know he has not been utilized as much as at least as much as I expected going into this season. A lot of fans probably expected, but he is still another guy that I think can win off the line. That's been an issue for this team outside of Stephon Diggs. I think getting open across the middle and starting to see him get utilized more is going to be to this offense's benefit. So hopefully he's going to be kind of a full go this week, and you're going to start seeing him being utilized a little bit more like fans probably envisioned when he was selected in the first round of this year's draft. And Matt, I have to ask, how do you say eggs and waffles?
Eggs.
What's the other one?
Because my wife says eggs. I don't like eggs, even though I think that is the proper way to say it. It just sounds weird to me. So I've always said eggs, and sometimes I like you really like lean on the first part, so it sounds like eggs, But eggs.
I think I'd say eggs too. So
Good. What's the other one?
waffles.
Waffles.
I don't know, Caitlin. I
She
was
must say
expecting something big here. I was
she
expecting
must say
something weird.
waffles or something. She must say waffles or waffles or something. I don't know, but she makes fun of me for how I say several things. So you're not alone, Ryan. I guess that's the grand declaration there is that our wives have problems with the way that we say certain words.
100%.
Good. All right, so a little off topic, but I think that we should talk about this because I think it's super interesting. Did you happen to catch the video that she said you're both annoying then? The video that Thad Brown tweeted on Monday. He got the post-game interaction between Sean McDermott and Brian Daboll, and boy, was it a frosty one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I felt like a little bit of a shiver as I watched it.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of snowing outside because of how cold that interaction was. I mean, that handshake was so brief. There was like no eye contact. They just moved along in their own direction. And listen, this is speculation because who knows? Maybe they talked before the game, or maybe there was more to it. But I'm guessing they are very different philosophically in terms of you know their mindsets, their beliefs, maybe, and maybe over time working together, they just kind of I don't know I don't want to say got on each other's nerves or anything like that, but it's just probably one of those strained relationships that over time occurred, and it was time for them to part ways and have that Dable get a head coaching job and Sean stay in Buffalo. But it definitely did not look like two coaches that had been together for quite a few years here in Buffalo, playing major roles at that for this team, with Dable leading the offense and McDermott obviously being the head coach and leading this defense.
Yeah, so when Daboll left and the Brian Flores lawsuit came out, if you all remember, um, McDermott and Daboll were actually named in the lawsuit because of Flores, who was a candidate for the Giants job. He was making the argument that it was always going to be Daboll, and he wasn't given a fair shot. And this was an excerpt from the lawsuit. Ironically, during their January 11, 2022 text exchange, Mr. McDonald, who was, I think, the president of the Giants at the time, also suggested that if Mr. Flores were hired as the Giants head coach, Brian Daboll might be interested in leaving Buffalo to serve as his offensive coordinator. Heard Daboll isn't happy with Sean McDermott in Buffalo, might be able to get out if he doesn't get a head job. ... Thoughts. So this was kind of, trending in that direction, and it's and Sean said all the right things ever since then. Publicly, he's never, suggested anything like that. Actually, he's been asked about this, and we wrote a story. I think it might have been at the Combine about it, asking both him and Daboll about it. And Sean said he respects Brian. And, I think the one quote he had last week even was, when you work with somebody for as long as we did, there's going to be tough conversations that happen in there. So I'm sure they had the exchange of ideas, maybe had ideas on how things should happen. And it's tough too, because if you look at both sides of the ball, like, you're both kind of like, you have your weight to pull, right? Like, as you're kind of, as the whole operation is moving forward. And, at times, like, it felt in the playoffs that maybe the defense wasn't carrying the same amount of weight as the offense was, especially in 2022, was it, or 2021, whichever what year was that? No, I can't even remember. 2021.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. It was definitely like, let's get in and out of this situation as fast as possible so we don't have to actually exchange any thoughts. And it's funny, even guys that you felt over the years, like there's like a undertone of a rivalry or anything like that. Like, I mean, that Sean's like 2 weeks removed from having a full out hug bro fest with Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, no, you're right, and they clearly respect one another, but like, conflict of ideas probably came up, and I would love to look at the splits of how often Josh Allen has been used as a runner under Dable versus the last year plus now under Ken Dorsey. It certainly feels significantly less. Maybe that was part of the philosophy issues where Sean didn't want his quarterback taking the hits. Brian realized that it put fear into the defense. It added another wrinkle to this offense because it certainly feels, especially this year, those numbers are down drastically. I don't want to say it's made this Bills team less dynamic, but I think it has taken something away from the fastball that we've seen them have the past few years. So it could have been something as simple as that, because you're dealing with a $258 million quarterback, and you want him to be healthy for that contract, and then obviously a future one as well.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't have to spend too much time on that. I thought it was just kind of interesting. AJ mentioned before, asking if Knox wrist injury has limited him at all, or if you've noticed anything with him this week. I haven't seen it, and he played the majority of the game. Obviously, had that one play where late in the game, I think it was a third down, where actually PFF did not give him a drop on that play, and Josh Allen took responsibility for it. The ball, it was a bad pass. Like, it should have been thrown a little bit further out, make it a little bit easier on your receiver. But no, I think Dawson Knox is in a good spot. That he's still dealing with the wrist injury. I think that's why he's on the injury report. But of all the people that are kind of dealing with something right now, he's probably the one I'm least worried about, if that makes sense. And then Damian Harris, obviously, still dealing with the neck injury. He's out of the hospital, which is great news. Scary scene on the field. Kind of reminded me of the Dane Jackson situation early last season. Remember when the ambulance came out for him? Obviously that transpired, or in a positive way, and it seems like Harris is trending in that direction as well. There's a little bit of a fake out the other night on the running back front, as Jordan Schultz tweeted that Leonard Fournette was coming to Buffalo on a visit, and I think like 10 hours later, the whole brigade came out with to refute that report, and he wasn't coming on that visit. And the reasoning was that Ty Johnson, the Bills maybe thought they might lose him off their practice squad. Although that's weird. Like, I don't know, like he's been on their practice squad for weeks. So I don't know what the sudden urge or sudden, you know, deal was that they thought somebody would take him or sign him. But they're just gonna kind of sit where they're at, which I think makes sense anyway. They've really leaned into Latavius Murray as it is, and I think adding a Leonard Fournette like kind of muddies the waters a little bit because I don't think they were really using Damian Harris all that much.
Yeah, I mean, the utilization would have been interesting. Who knows if it would have been a main roster or practice squad move? Because if it was to replace Ty Johnson, hypothetically, it might have been a practice squad type of deal until you could get into prove he was in football shape and maybe then elevate him. You know, Fournette, he's built like he's a physical back, but he's actually a pretty good pass catcher too. 73 receptions last year in Tampa Bay. So I'm sure the Bills maybe in their mindset, if we lose Ty Johnson, this is that next man up that we think can do things, a lot of the same things. And the one interesting thing about practice squad players is if a team does want to sign them, the players can actually say, no, I want to stay on the practice squad. So who knows? Maybe it was Johnson who ultimately made a decision to say he wanted to stay in Buffalo. Maybe he knew an opportunity would present itself based on this injury to Damian Harris over these next few weeks. I'm not sure what happened there, obviously, based on that report from Jordan Schultz. But if Fournette remains unsigned and there is an injury in this running back room, I mean, I think we know who might be getting that call if that were the case.
If you're not gonna get a call, but if you want to get a text, you should sign up to become a Shout Buffalo Bills insider. Text messages galore from Ryan Talbot and Matt Parrino. 716-528-6727. That will get you a 2-week free trial. $3.99 a month after that. And the Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street, Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give him a call at 716-852-1234 or check out litrolaw.com. Josh Allen downplaying the shoulder injury. He was asked several questions about it today. And he, kind of glossed over it, was, he'll be fine. Kind of alluded to the fact that it's kind of like a pain management thing. So we will see how that progresses. But Sean said something interesting today that, he's been around Josh long enough, and that if something rises to the level of concerning, Josh is usually somebody that lets him know. So they're not there yet. But with a shoulder injury, Ryan, like one of the things that you probably start to think about is, all right, if he goes out there against the Patriots and throws it 40 times, how is that thing going to be holding up in the fourth quarter? And maybe does that lead him this week to sugar high Josh Allen and maybe utilizing the run game a little bit more, which, oh, by the way, we're not asking nearly enough about in all these press conferences.
Right. So, you don't want him to take extra shots to the shoulder either in terms of if he ran with the ball or things like that. But I think the Bills, this is one of those matchups where they could probably be not lean on the run game, but run it a little bit more than maybe they usually do. This Patriots team has looked absolutely lost this season. There's been a lot of injuries. Some key players have been lost. The
Ryan,
offense.
Ryan, so are the Giants.
I know.
Or Sunday night, just throwing it out there.
I'm just throwing, but I truly do think that Brian Daboll, knowing this entire offense,
Right.
the scheme, probably had Wink Martindale really well set up for preparation. Some Giants players said that they had a good idea of what the Bills are doing based on the looks that they were given on Sunday night too. So every team obviously does their due diligence, watches the film and things like that. But I think the Giants did have a little bit of a leg up there, having Brian Daboll, who Ken Dorsey still utilizes his offense heavily in this system in Buffalo. Against the Patriots, though, like I said, they've been lost. I mean, they've been blown out by some teams that really aren't excellent or are outstanding by any means. This just seems like a team that has taken another step backward somehow. I thought with Bill O'Brien, the offense was going to look better. They had some moments early on in the year where I said, okay, this might be a better functioning offense than it was a year ago, but everything's kind of gone wrong for them. So I do think that the Bills can lean on this run game with Murray and Cook a little bit more. Maybe it's some shorter passes, but you don't want him throwing the ball 40 times like you originally said. You're hoping this doesn't turn into some kind of shootout, because that probably would not be good for the pain management aspect of the shoulder injury.
Um, I want to transition here a little bit to talk about the offense in general. Then we'll get into the Shout Insider questions to close out the show. Getting a chance to talk to Josh today, who was very defensive of Ken Dorsey, and I believe rightfully so. Um, I just I think it's so easy to pin it on the play caller when I think that's a really difficult thing for the majority of fans and even media for that matter to like deduce when it comes down to like separating the blame and finding who's specifically to blame. There were, a couple plays in that game that weren't just not executed properly. And I thought it was, interesting that not only did Josh come out and say, it's not Ken Dorsey. You don't know what's going on between the walls. Everybody has belief in him. Several players echoed those statements. But also, it's just like it comes down to like little things early in games. Like that's what we're talking about is these really slow starts. They're not like executing at a super high level consistently early in games the last 2 weeks. Like I know that's a cliche and a lot of people kind of throw that out. But I don't think that they're making plays. Just simply like getting a couple first downs on the first drive, I think would do wonders. And that's something that Josh said has been an emphasis this week is just, all right, let's come out with that early game script and just execute effectively, like lean into some plays that we really like, the details that we like, get a couple first downs and get it kind of rolling in that department.
Yeah, and that's kind of the worrisome part of it is usually you see teams are clicking on that opening drive because those are the scripted plays, 10 to 15 scripted plays. You've been working on them all week. You think that it's going to be advantageous for your matchup, and the Bills just haven't kind of come out the last few games. London, you can pin it on them, just kind of the jet lag, the issues there. Last week, if you do look at that first drive, they said incidental contact, the tripping. Really, the guy stumbled and he knocked into Gabe Davis's leg. Should have been a flag, according to the officials on the television broadcast on that opening drive. That gets called. The Bills probably do score some points, or get into the range to score points. They had two missed field goals, so they could have had 20 some points, 27, let's just say hypothetically. If they scored 27 points against the Giants, I don't think people are sitting here saying how bad of a job this offense did. It just comes down to execution. It comes down to converting on those opportunities. And yes, Tyler Bass's field goals were about 52 and 53 yards, respectively. Longer kicks, still kicks that he's obviously more than capable of making based on his history. They weren't gimmies, though. But this team does need to come out kind of and get into this groove early on. Take those second and long shotgun handoff plays out of the playbook. I think that'll go a long way in kind of helping them move the chains and getting in better situations.
One thing that I think is interesting, and I put it in the headline of this episode, is something that I think Ken Dorsey should do more of. And this is the one area that, couple things. Obviously, I think the conversation around Josh under center and running play action, like I think they should lean into that more in general. Not like considerably more, but say they're averaging 8 under center snaps per game, maybe upping that to like 13, which gives you maybe 2 or 3 extra play action snaps per game when it's working, I think would be useful for keeping defenses off balance a little bit. But I was shocked. Seth Walder from ESPN put out a motion report. ESPN Stats and Info tracks this data, and through 6 weeks, you're going to be amazed at where the Bills rank in motion at the snap percentage in the NFL. Can you guess, Ryan? Out of 32 teams, where the Bills rank in snap motion percentage?
Feels pretty low, so I'm not 100% sure where are they at.
They're at number 26 of 32 teams.
Yeah.
13.7% of snaps do they have motion happening at the time of the snap. For comparison's sake, the Miami Dolphins are at obviously a crazy high, number 1 in the league. 62.2% of snaps are they moving at the when the ball is hiked. The Los Angeles Rams are number 2 at 40.7. The 49ers are third at 39.2. The Detroit Lions are fourth at 32.7. So offenses that feel like they're among the elite in the NFL are using a lot of motion. And even the Chiefs, who come in at 13 at 19.9%, I almost wonder if the Bills wouldn't benefit from a little bit more motion in their offense when they're trying early on in games to find some, you know, just some momentum to throw different looks at it. It doesn't have to be every single snap, but a little bit more of it. What did they do in the red zone when they needed to find a spark? They sent Deontay Hardy in a crazy motion kind of situation, ran behind the running back, sent him back out wide, snapped the ball, got the ball to him in space, boom, touchdown. Like that was a staple of the Brian Dable led Bills
Well,
offenses.
all the time. You saw Isaiah McKenzie being used in motion in those offenses, and sometimes it helped Josh Allen to determine what these defenses were doing pre-snap. So it was beneficial in that regard. But it's also beneficial in helping these guys get open. And you mentioned the Hardy play. I'm pretty sure we saw that a few times at training camp, and it worked pretty well there, and it worked in this game. There was a really good one on Monday Night Football that the Chargers used as well against Dallas this week, where Keenan Allen went in motion pre-snap, and it was the easiest touchdown you would see, just because of the way that he started out as a jog and he went full sprint across the line and near the end zone, easy play. So even some of these elite players use the motion and it works. And you mentioned the offenses; those are top in the league. Maybe it's the personnel, maybe it's the packages that they're using. It's not working for that, but I would love to see some more three wide receiver sets with Hardy being the player in motion, because he has that game changing speed. As much as we enjoyed Isaiah McKenzie as a gadget player, he doesn't have the blazing speed that Deontay Hardy has. If you get Hardy in motion, get him that little, like, almost, I almost want to call it like a head start, because you see Tyreek Hill and the way that he gets up to speed off the line there, when they snap it. I think that would benefit Hardy significantly in terms of getting open down the field, adding some fear into these defenses in that intermediate to deep area, where right now the only player that's really striking fear in their hearts is Stephon Diggs. And yes, Allen and this Bills offense, they're getting him the ball. He's being productive. They're finding ways to win games, but they need someone else to really start stepping up. And maybe it is a mix and match of personnel packages that they have to kind of throw out there, to start using motion a little bit more to their advantage.
Did a little research while you were talking there, and I'm going to have to walk back my comments because uh, they're literally at almost the exact same percentage of motion that was on these reports back in 2020 and 2021
Wow.
when Brian Dable was. As a matter of fact, they're a tick above about 12-ish% of the snaps at different variations. I mean, Seth Walder has put out these reports for a couple of years now. I think ESPN started tracking this stat in 2019. But I wonder if it's just something where you look at some of the successful offenses and around the league, and you look at the Dolphins and the 49ers, it's like, all right, are we at the stage now where I think Ken Dorsey's been good? I'm kind of like in the minority. I think in terms of where he's at, second year play caller, he's done a lot of good things. The Bills still rank, and we're going to get into this in a little bit later in the show, pretty high in most offensive categories. But is this the time to start tinkering? And maybe that's something that they're doing. Sean was talking about maybe doing a little bit of a deeper dive this week to try to figure out, all right, who's going to be option 2, who's going to be option 3 in the offense. Maybe you could start implementing some of the other variations of plays that other offenses are using to have success around the league into what you already do in your own system.
And that's what I would like to see, because this is not a finished product on offense or defense. As great as the defense has been, they're still going to add wrinkles in over the course of the season, some new things that we haven't seen yet. You want that from the offense as well. And we get a lot of questions in the Shout Insider text line about why is Khalil Shakir getting so many reps over Hardy and over these other players, and his blocking's been elite for the record, and that's probably a big reason why. But that doesn't mean that the Bills should keep it that way. They should try to get Hardy more involved. They should try to get Dolan Kincaid, their first, over the first round pick, more involved in this offense. It just hasn't happened yet. And we talked last week about the fact that the Detroit Lions, for instance, don't have a true alpha number one. They have a lot of really good players, and the Bills obviously have an alpha number one top tier receiver in Stephon Diggs. So it muddies it a little bit. It makes it harder to necessarily get him the ball the way that they were to Sam Laporta. But he needs to see a rise in snaps, a rise in targets, because that's, again, another wrinkle that this offense is missing right now.
If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Smash that like button for us. Subscribe to the channel if this is your first time here. We are live at least 3 times a week, and we always have you covered game day, week of the game leading up to the game with all your Buffalo Bills coverage. All right, let's get into the Q&A. Thank you, Rick Rarick on YouTube, reminding everybody to hit that like button. We appreciate that. We put out the signal to shout insiders, and we're giving them the second half of this show with all of their questions. If you have something, if you're watching live and you have a question, we got you. We'll bring those in as well. Somebody's saying, "Come on, Matt, how can the G in hanger be silent?" That's right. I misspoke there. It's not the heavy G is silent. Like you're saying hanger, where it's just more like hanger. Like the G is it's just subtle. It's a subtle G, Ryan.
I like that we're still on this topic. I know. I hear it all the time from not just Joelle, but her whole family. But then I just kind of bring it into conversations whenever I can, which is it's not an easy word to just naturally bring up, by the way.
Okay, good. um our producer Kayla said that she questioned me in her head for a solid 2 minutes when I said the G was silent. I just meant like just relax with the heavy G. That's all I'm saying. That but I think you kind of lean into these things too when you get this kind of feedback, Ryan. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair and accurate assessment.
All right, let's get into these questions. Q&A style, rapid fire. We were just gonna go one through one because we got like 15. So, all right, let's start with Kyle, our good friend Kyle. Hunter Renfrow has fallen out of favor with the Raiders coaches. The Bills probably could get him cheap. Could you guys see him as a trade target? And who else do you think could be a Bills trade target? Got my bottle of wine, cigar, and fireplace ready. Looking forward to the live show. Kyle, my man, we appreciate you. This is an interesting one because we got a lot of different things. I don't want to get into the trade targets because there's more questions about that, but let's specifically hit on Hunter here because I feel like we've flirted with this idea on this show several times over the last couple of years. Like to me, if you look around the league at what Cole Beasley did, there's not a more like seamless fit to kind of take over that in that department than Hunter Renfrow. Like he's super sudden. He's creative as a route runner out of the slot. One other player that I'll mention later, he's not really a true slot. And that's what I feel like limits some of the other players. I don't think the Bills necessarily need an outside threat, although I think you make an argument for it. We'll get into that in a little while. What are your thoughts on Hunter Renfrow?
Whenever you look at these trade candidates, it's hard when they have a big cap hit. He has a $13 million cap hit next season. I don't know what he's owed on the $13 million cap hit this year in terms of what's remaining. They would have to eat a lot of the salary to make it work first and foremost. But in terms of Renfrow, the player, yes, I like the idea of adding a player like that that's fallen out of favor with Las Vegas because he's someone that has shown in his career that he can win off the line. And that's where the Bills have been struggling. It's been Stephon Diggs winning his route immediately, getting open, being able to kind of to catch the ball, then those short, quick hitters. Gabe Davis hasn't been able to do that. Dawson Knox hasn't been able to do that. Kincaid, the list goes on and on. So in terms of that, yes, I like the idea. I'm for any type of player that they feel like can come in and win those immediate off the line battles. Create that immediate separation because that's what this team has been lacking so far this year.
Yeah, the trouble for me visualizing this is like, what is the road to significant playing time for anybody they acquire at the trade deadline? There's already like too many people that they're trying to kind of fit into this thing. Like I think Trent Sherfield has a really cool skill set, and they talked all summer about how much they loved how quickly he acclimated and how many different things he could do. But instituting that and making it a part of the week to week offense, it just hasn't existed. And so, like, are you going to go out and trade an asset for a Hunter Renfrow with this idea that he fits into this Cole Beasley idea? Meanwhile, you have Dalton Kincaid, who you're still trying to figure out how to use, and you drafted him to be that guy. It's just like any kind of trade feels like for a slot guy, feels like there's too many obstacles to clear.
No, and that's fair. I mean, there's already enough mouths to feed in this offense that aren't getting the ball. I just sat here a few minutes ago saying I want Deontay Hardy to get more reps and get more work in this offense. And if you add another player, as talented as Renfro has proven to be throughout his career, then it's about the snap count when it comes to players like Hardy and Sherfield and Khalil Shakir. So that certainly makes it more difficult at the wide receiver position specifically.
All right, let's get to our next question here. Comes from Jonathan. The Titans are willing to listen to offers for Derrick Henry. And I had a little bit of a back and forth on this with our good friend Jonathan. I'm not sure if I've seen any reports that they're open for business on Henry, but it does make sense at 2-4, being the limited offense that they've been through 6 games, and the Ryan Tannehill situation is a tough situation to be in. So Derrick Henry in the last year of his contract, to me, there feels like a little bit more juice here than most of the time when we think about a trade for a running back, only because it's the last year of his deal. You probably get the Titans to pick up most of the tab. You probably don't have to give up a crazy amount. Like, Ryan, am I crazy for being okay with maybe a 4th rounder for Derrick Henry on a 1-year situation to bring him in here and pair with James Cook? I've watched the last couple of games for the Titans. It just worked out that I was able to watch them live. He looks like he's running the ball really well. Now, I will say Bleacher Report had some trade packages, and it started with like a 2nd and a 5th. I'm out at that. Like, I don't think you should make the move for that. But for a 4th, I don't know. Like, I think that's the kind of guy that not only comes in here and becomes your best running back, but also like he adds like more legitimacy to your offense, because he's been this like, skins on the wall, all pro caliber player for so long. It's why I think teams like the Eagles keep adding like the Julio Jones of the world, because there's a little bit of a juice boost.
I like juice boost, by the way. That's a great term for this. Yeah, I actually watched him last week, and it's insane that for as much wear and tear as there's been on him throughout his career, the way that he can accelerate at his size is just scary still. He had a one really long run last week in the game, and he's still showing the ability to kind of get off of tackle attempts, get downfield. So, in terms of the player himself, I'm not against it. 4th and a 5th round pick, I'm all for that. Yeah, no way would I send a day 2 pick, an early day 2 pick at that for a running back, especially one with as much wear and tear as I mentioned on him. But yeah, a day 3 pick or picks, all for that idea, especially with the Bills getting another 3rd round pick in this upcoming draft because of the Tremaine Edmonds contract and free agency. I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of what this offense is missing, putting fear in defenses in terms of the run game. James Cook has that home run hitter ability, but they don't have that person that strikes fear between the tackles. Latavius Murray's been fine. He doesn't strike fear though in any defenses, obviously, the way Derrick Henry would. So, in my opinion, I feel like the trade candidates need to be on the other side of the ball, on the defensive side with the injuries that they've gone through, especially at the cornerback position. But if you can get a premier player like Henry and the price is right on a team with, in a tough conference like the AFC, I think that it would put the Bills, another notch ahead of some of these other contenders.
Brent asks potential additions, trade targets for the team at one tech defensive tackle. I don't have a ton. Like, one name that's kind of floating out there, and he's not a one tech, he's more of an edge rusher, but he could play a little bit inside, is Daniil Hunter, but I think the money is probably too big. I was
Right.
thinking about even like if Washington got to a place where they became sellers, like giving them a call about like Jonathan Allen would be super interesting, because you have to think about long term too, Ryan. Like, you have Ed Oliver under contract, but beyond him, there's no other defensive tackles under contract. So if you can maybe swing a Jonathan Allen for like, I wouldn't give up a first rounder. As good as he is, I wouldn't give up a first rounder, but I'd start thinking about it at a 2 or something like that if you're worried about your depth on the interior. But you look around the league, I don't know if there's any like, maybe if the Bucks really fell off, maybe calling them about Vita Vea. Like, I feel like that would be I don't know if they'd be willing to kind of, he's like a stabilizing presence on their defense and in their franchise. But I don't know. again, maybe there's some lower end names that we could talk about, but I think if you're going to make a move like that, like you take a legit swing. And I don't know how many people are shopping like legitimate starting one techs.
Yeah, that's going to be hard to find. I mean, what would your thoughts be on like a Harrison Phillips if it was a reunion? I know, yeah, I know,
I'm
but
out.
again,
I'm out on that
Minnesota.
idea. Listen, go look
Was,
at the career stats, man.
I get it.
He's very, very average. And I think you have that guy. I think you can make an argument that, you know, Ilianku, when he's played, has given
I,
you just as much as
I think
Harrison
Anku
Phillips
though
did.
is actually on the Falcons
Who
team.
is?
Isn't Anku?
He's on the Bills practice squad, according to the Bills website.
Oh, Wiki has
Wow.
him on Atlanta right now. But either way, when it comes to Phillips, the only theory of that is he knows the system, he knows the defense. We haven't really seen him in a true Sean McDermott scheme that we're seeing this year. It was more of the Leslie Frazier scheme, but it was more so the familiarity aspect of it. But you're right. I mean, getting those players that are going to be available that one tech. I don't know if there's anyone out there that would be a game changer. I think that they like their depth at defensive tackle. We still haven't gotten a clear timeline either on Daquan Jones and how off or how soon could he be back. Realistically, could he come back this season late in the year? Is the playoffs realistic? If that's the case too, they might stay with the status quo there.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's been inactive for the Falcons, excuse my French, the last couple of weeks. Um, the Bills website got to get updated there. They really let me down. Huge error. Anyway, let's get to the next question. I think they could spin the wheels a little bit at D tackle with and I think that's a good point that you make on Daquan Jones. Like, what's the outlook? Will you get him back at some point this year? We'll see. We'll see. All right, relax, Kaylin. What's going on here? My wife is like, please rejoice on being right, Ryan. Go ahead, take a victory lap.
No. We're a team. This is a team effort. This is a team effort.
Listen, look at that. What a guy. What a gent. All right. Next up, we got a lot of questions. We got to keep flying
Yeah.
through these. John, I'm surprised Dorian Williams and Terrell Bernard weren't on the injury report. There was a lot circulating on Twitter this morning that they both had knee injuries during the game. Now, our good buddy Kyle Trimble was taking a little bit of heat on this, and I think people got to spend a little bit more time instead of just seeing the things that are retweeted, actually examining what the tweet is. Like I went and looked at his tweet on Terrell Bernard, and he was just saying that he suffered an injury in game to his eye and he played through it. So like, okay, if he didn't show up on the injury report, I'm sitting here on this day thinking, okay, he's in a good spot. Like it's not going to affect him long term. I'm not like out for blood with Kyle. I mean, Kyle's out there trying to like spot all these injuries and give you kind of that that analysis from a medical background. I think he did a good job, and he actually had to play where he thought the injury happened, and he noted a couple times during the game where it looked like he had a noticeable limp. But that the fact that he's okay now and he's not in the injury report is a good sign for him. And then also Dorian Williams. If they were dealing with real injuries that they had to like, rehab or like get treatment for this week, they'd be on the injury report.
Right. And it could just be a slight tweak, a slight thing in game that didn't feel right. Maybe, made them limp here and there, but within a day or two, it can be gone and they can be fine. And obviously, it's a good thing that they're not on the injury report. Both played a big role in last week's win. Obviously, Terrell Bernard has been maybe the surprise of the season. I think AJ Epinesa can be up there too in that debate, but he's been outstanding. And I thought Dorian Williams had a really nice game last week as well.
You would. No, I agree. He did have a good game. No, my wife, I think she's realized too that she comments a lot in the chat and we don't see it usually, or we don't like respond to it. So she just has foregone the YouTube chat and she's gone straight to our text inbox and just texting us both. And now I see gifts coming in. There's one from Bridesmaids. It's a whole excuse my French, but shit show in the text right now.
He's going
Anyway.
for it. I like it.
Yeah, there we go. All right, next question. All right, no more gifts, Caitlin. I gotta find the questions here.
You want me to get
All
the
right.
next one?
curious if there from Joseph. Curious if there is an update on Matt Milano and Daquan Jones. What are the chances either or both come back this season? I don't think we're going to get a substantial one until we really get them into their rehab and like, are they able to walk? Are they able to, or for Milano, be able to walk? For Daquan Jones, be able to kind of have some mobility with that thing. I'm pretty sure that the timeline on that is like at least 6 weeks till you probably get to a point where you can make another assessment in terms of where they're at.
Yeah, they have to go through the rehab process on their respective injuries before we know. I just tell anyone that asks me, I think it's a good thing that Sean McDermott didn't close the door on either of them being out for the season. That alone should give fans a glimmer of hope that they could, one or both could be back late in the year.
From RJ, this is a good one. Do you think the Bills should go after a more reliable quarterback to back up Josh and the chance he can't play down the road? Uh, you know, this is a timely question considering what's going on with the shoulder right now. I've been on the record that I don't know if you can go out and get a quarterback that is going to make you feel good about any amount of time with Josh Allen on unavailable. Could they upgrade the spot? Sure. Like, but what does that look like? Who are the real valuable backup quarter? Maybe like a Taylor Heineke is somebody that maybe like he reminds me a lot of like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Maybe he can give you some juice in a short amount of time. Somebody like in that category that's had some success. I know Gardner Minshew is now the guy in
Yeah,
Indianapolis. I
Frosty
might have
McD-Daboll.
mentioned him, but that's off the table. So I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be able to go out and get a guy, and how much are you willing to really give up for that?
Right. No, I don't think there is an answer out there necessarily. And even Heineke, who you just mentioned, I think he could become the starter in Atlanta. I think
Right.
Desmond Ritter has really struggled, and he had one good game 2 weeks ago, but there's been a lot more downs than ups. And if this team is planning on trying to make a run in that division this year, they might have to turn to him. That he might be their best option. They do have a lot of good players on that offensive side of the ball that aren't getting utilized properly on a consistent basis. So I don't even know if he would be available. So, in theory, yes, it's a great idea. It's a great plan to go out and try to get someone that you think could come in if something were to happen. But there's very few cases where, like the Nick Foles of the world, where he kind of comes in, plays hot, leads them to the Super Bowl, and things like that when it comes to the backup situation.
Okay. Do you second part of RJ's question, do you believe it will ever get to the point where Ken Dorsey gets help calling plays? I mean, it's hard to predict the future, but
Right.
I think Sean was pretty direct with that. Had no problem with the question that Tim Graham asked from The Athletic. I thought it was um, sometimes you got to just throw a question out there to just take the temperature of the room, see where things are at. I think the most important thing, because he took some heat on that, and so I'll back him up 100% on that. It was a
Agreed.
good question. I thought it was a conversation starter, and if you notice, everybody quickly reacted to it, and that to a degree is his job. Like in all of our jobs in those press conferences to you know create a conversation around what's happening with this team, and that accomplished that. So kudos to Tim. I thought that was a good question, and it led to a string of other questions, and then into the Ken Dorsey one as well, which we also talked to him about. I asked him specifically about the shotgun draw play that he will not erase from his repertoire, and he came back and defended it and said, "Listen, it's about creating situations that surprise the defense." And I maybe push back a little bit and say that play has not surprised many defenses this year, but the idea behind it is to create balance. I think Ken's done a really good job of calling plays. I think the Bills are. I think it was Mike Sando who put out a tweet today, was kind of taking a shot at the local media, asking Josh so many questions about Dorsey, and said, crazy considering the Bills are, I think, third in the league in EPA per play and sixth in success rate. Those are a couple advanced analytic stats. And I would agree with that point. Like, I think that, listen, I think that there's certain things we can kind of dive into with Dorsey, and that's what I attempted to do with, asking him about shotgun versus play action last week and kind of getting his, thoughts on that. He's never too revealing, but I think we can ask those questions. But I do think, like, suggesting that this offense hasn't been good this season, if that were anybody's assertion, I think would be wrong.
Yeah, and first of all, Tim's question was bring up the point that the Bills do have multiple coaches on that side of the ball that have called plays before, and the it was only for a few plays or for a half, but we've seen McDermott take play calling over from Leslie Frazier at times in his tenure. One time specifically coming to mind. So it was a fair question, and Sean was very quick to say no and to kind of move on from that. But I understood the talking point. But when it comes to this offense, it comes down to execution. And it comes down to not shooting yourself in the foot with penalties and getting yourself backed up, because we have seen a lot of really good things from this offense when they can stay in front of the chains and they're not taking 10-yard penalties and they're not taking, these 15 yarders and putting themselves in unrealistic situations to move the ball. When there's not drops, when there's not penalties that aren't getting called on, like the quote unquote feet tangling in that first time. So overall, this offense has done very well. There's that 3-game span where they were outscoring teams, like 123 to 33 or something like that. So this offense, when it gets into a rhythm, really does, execute well and moves the ball and puts up points. It's just about getting into that rhythm early.
Jonathan says, and we can give our big picture trade prediction if you want, if the Bills were to make a trade. Jonathan asks, if Bills do make a trade before the deadline, what do you think they go after? And you mentioned the defensive side of the ball, so maybe that's the way that you want to go. I think this is super interesting, and I'm highlighting Carl Tomlin here. I think that the Patriots, they lose this weekend, it's going to be a fire sale, I'd imagine. Like, they're going to try to, get as much draft capital as they can before the deadline. They may be moving on from Mac Jones. Like, who knows? What are the chances that Carl asks, pulls the trigger and Kendrick Bourne walks across the field and becomes a Buffalo Bill? It's the last year and has team-friendly contracts, and the Patriots are tanking. He's actually one player. Like, is this a crazy take, Ryan? I would rather have Kendrick Bourne than Jerry Jeudy. Is that wild?
No, because Jerry Jeudy is disappointed quite a bit, honestly, in his tenure with that pedigree, with that high pick. Bourne adds something a little bit different. And it's funny, when he brought up this question in the chat, it does feel like the Patriots are that one team that trades within the division more than anyone else. I was looking back, and it's, some of these are way back when, but 2 trades with the Bills, about 5 or 6 with the Dolphins since 2003. Since 2019, they've made a few trades with the Jets. So they never kind of shut the door on any team when it comes to a player. And, if they're trying to get in on these, the quarterback sweepstakes, it's not just a one quarterback show anymore in this upcoming year's draft. If they want to do that, then yeah, getting rid of a wide receiver in the final year and getting a late round pick back in exchange isn't the worst play in the world. So I don't hate it. For me, it'd be a cornerback. That's the one position I think they need to go after. And it's tough, again, with salary cap figures and things like that. Dante Jackson was one name that was put out there in Carolina and being available, but he has a heavy cap hit next year. Is that something that you can work and manage and maneuver? Is it something where you can lower that cap hit if you like him? The Bills had him as a pre-draft visitor back in his draft class. They did their homework on him. Trey White was very complimentary of him, wanting to have another LSU guy in that cornerback room at the time. So I also watched him get just absolutely roasted by Tyreek Hill last week, though, as well, which Hill does that to most people. But cornerback is the one position specifically that I would be targeting.
The thing back to Bourne, too, that why I ultimately wouldn't make the deal is because I think that what he does well is what you signed Deontay Hardy to do.
Yeah.
And if he's not able to do that already, or if you're not even giving him the opportunity to do that, you're not going to go make a trade for somebody and try to force feed it into the offense. Like, I almost think that as much as I think like how Bourne wins feels like he does a lot of stuff over the middle of the field. Now, I do think Gabe Davis has done more of that this year, which I think helps the whole situation. I just think he gives you a little bit of a different flavor, although, maybe Gabe's a little bit bigger, but they are actually similar in terms of like speed and, kind of how they play. So maybe that's not, I'm talking myself out of it as we kind of talk through. I want to give Carl some love, one of our regulars in the YouTube channel, but he's somebody that kind of came up and, if you're looking for, I think the idea I like the most is the Derrick Henry idea. If the price is right. I just don't know, like, you could probably go out and get a Levi Wallace, and I know how everybody feels like about Levi. They're actually, I think, have another cornerback that's on the trade block as well. I read a report on that. So yeah, let's get to a couple more of these questions before we have to get out of here. Zach, our good buddy Zach, what who do you think is the X factor at this point outside of Stephon Diggs and James Cook to get involved in this offense that will open things up? Tight ends, Davis, Hardy, Murray, Sherfield. Who would you say, Ryan? Who do you think after those two? And I think I'd probably even remove Cook from that, and I'd say who's number 2 after Diggs, because I think Cook's kind of down the pecking order there.
I think it's Kincaid based on where they drafted him and what we saw from him this summer. But in terms of an X factor, when I think of X factor, I think of this one guy that can kind of come in and get you a big play or two here and there once a week. And for me, that's Hardy. Hardy has that game-changing speed, that breakaway speed. We saw him make big play after big play during his tenure in New Orleans, and he had one opportunity in that Jacksonville game to go downfield, and he executed it. It was like a 40-some yard gain, if I remember correctly, and then he had a 20-yarder in that one as well. So he can get those chunk plays for you. So for an X factor, someone that can get the big chunk plays, he's my guy that I would choose.
Yeah, I threw that lob up, and Roy Collins came in and dunked it home with the get GTFOH out of here with the Levi Wallace talk. I'm just kidding, Roy. I won't do that to you. I know that, we moved on from that conversation, and we're not going to bring it back up too soon. Don't worry about it. All right, let's go to David. This will be our last one. Outside of evacuation, I think you might have been looking for a different word there, but we'll see. Could probably be the combination of plays in a series, meaning 2 obviously in the one play to the next. I don't know. I'm having trouble reading this one. Bills try a hook and ladder play between Diggs and Cook. The play was an interception for Josh. It was not. I felt way better the next day just because they tried this play. Jags versus Bills game, I believe. Getting it in the film was important, in my opinion. Thank you, guys. So I think that the idea of this, I should have followed up with him, is should the Bills kind of do a little bit more trick plays, out of the box thinking kind of plays, just to get it on tape to maybe cause some, worry or preparing for more things for opposing defenses?
I'm not against it. I think that the play that he was referencing, though, was like one of the final plays or late in that game where they were just trying to get.
It was like the last play, right? It was like a fumble.
Yeah, if I remember correctly there. So that may have been it, because they were able to force them to punt, get the ball back late, and probably tried it there. And that's very common. You get those laterals. You get sometimes the teams do the hook and ladder. In terms of getting more creative plays out there on tape to get the idea in the opposing team's head that they could try to run it, I'm not against it, but there's a time and place for all of these calls. There's a reason why that play came late in that regulation game against Jacksonville. I mean, it was a last-ditch desperation type of play. That doesn't mean that every creative type of play out there is in that same box. Flea flickers, you don't see those as much anymore. That's something they could try. They could do the double end arounds. They could do a lot of different things. Wide receiver passing the ball down the field. Getting those things on tape from time to time when the opportunity presents itself based on what you see from opposing defenses on their film. I'm all for it. But again, it's not something where I want this Bills team to have a Taysom Hill type of player on this roster taking reps away from a Josh Allen type of quarterback. So if that makes sense.
It does. And I think that's a beautiful bow to put on our Shout Insider Q&A. Good job, Ryan, as always. And if you want to do a good job for everybody at your party this Sunday, maybe you're not going to Gillette Stadium, and why would you want to? I'm just kidding. Boston people are wonderful. Just kidding. Start your Slider Sunday winning streak with King's Hawaiian this football season and earn rewards to redeem for free product, brand swag, tailgating gear, and much more. Visit slidersunday.com, get all the details, and then visit the Tops Deli section and look for the bright orange King's Hawaiian display to scan the QR for a chance to instantly win tailgating prizes. And then get a lot of homework, Bills Mafia. Visit topsmarkets.com/Slider Sunday. Get all the best slider recipes you can handle. Always make Tops Friendly Markets a part of your game day. Ryan Talbot, Final thought. All right, we got a couple of super chats here. Let's get
Yeah,
these in before we get the final thought.
Final thought is check out the super chats that we have here.
Go for which wide receiver in the 24 draft, dude. Carl's coming in with the heavy hitters, dude. I have not started. I've not watched. The only college football team that I've watched this year is Colorado. I'm sorry to say.
You know, and Worthy is at Texas, and he's a really good player. I want to say there was a Boston College receiver I just watched that had an unreal game. Florida State has some good guys. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the top receiver in this year's draft, nowhere near Buffalo's range, but there's some really good receivers in this upcoming draft. And even if the Bills are in those late 20s, or as you know, Bills fans are hoping the last pick of the first round, I still think they could get a good wide receiver to fall into their lap. So it all depends on what they see their needs being. Obviously, if Gabe Davis is not part of their long-term plans, that probably shoots up their draft board in terms of position need. And it's a good year to have that as need based on the talent in the upcoming draft.
Listen, if I'll do some work on the wide receivers before December, and I'll get back to you on that, Carl. But in the meantime, if we were power ranking Shout fans, I think Kyle Gallagher is a write him in pen top 3 candidate. This dude is not only a Shout insider, but he's in the live show going like this with the super chats. Pumpkin spice lattes on me, boys. Thanks as always for the top-notch content. Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, all of you, for making us a part of your Wednesday night. You can find us on the audio platforms as well if you came in late and you want to download the episode to listen to later. And we will be right back on Friday. Preview Bills versus Patriots. Take care, everybody.